Leadership in healthcare isn't just about having a badge or a title. It's about how you show up when it matters the most. Whether you're on the front lines of an ER, coordinating with EMS out in the field, or managing critical care, real leadership isn't about dictating. It's about empowering others to act, think, and lead when the stakes are high. But excellent leadership doesn't just happen overnight. It's built through trust, training, and a shared sense of responsibility. As an ER doc, an EMS medical director, an educator, and a resuscitationist, I've seen it time and again. Real work in healthcare gets done through teamwork. And the strongest teams are built on shared leadership, clear communication, and trust when it matters the most. Welcome to In the Heart of Care. I'm your host, Dr. Ash Panchal. Today, we're talking about climbing the corporate ladder in scrubs. I know what you're thinking. After years of medical training and finally becoming licensed to administer medical care, going to work might have felt like a big relief. We made it. We got there. And then reality hits. The learning never stops on this job. And for those of us in the hospital, we're in our own kind of classroom, where every shift teaches you something new about patients, about teamwork, even about ourselves. That's why we're talking to Amanda Slagle, a global nurse consultant with experience in bedside care, community health, and international health systems.
I'm a certified global nurse consultant. I'm also a master's prepared nurse from the United States, and I've been practicing nursing for over 15 years. I have a background in adult med-surg, as well as community health nursing at the county and state levels.
Amanda's leadership journey didn't stop at the bedside. She began teaching nursing students about global health, leadership, and advocacy. And then she took that passion overseas.
In the last few years, I've been living overseas, focusing on global health systems. And I've designed and facilitated quality improvement trainings for the Philippines Minister of Health, supported the development of a competency-based clinical ladder tool for Sigma Theta Tau International, and provided quality improvement leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic at a private hospital in Ghana.
Leadership in Amanda's world isn't just about shift work. It's about seeing the bigger picture, how systems connect, how people grow, and how structures support better care. One key piece of that? Clinical ladder programs.
Clinical ladder programs are frameworks designed to recognize and reward nurses for their professional growth in areas like education, research, clinical expertise, and leadership. And these programs provide insight into different components of the healthcare system that nurses may not have been exposed to while in school. And clinical ladder programs create opportunities for nurses to engage with aspects of healthcare that go beyond their daily responsibilities, but ultimately strengthen an array of competencies for themselves as a professional, but they also benefit the facility that is investing in the clinical ladder program and investing in the nurse. Clinical ladder programs are tools often used as retention strategies because they include incentives like a salary increase, bonuses, possibly title promotions, or maybe academic tuition support, and it's all tied to participating in the program.
As Amanda explains, clinical ladder programs are impact-focused. These programs can shift the culture of care.
What is critical for organizations to understand is that clinical ladder programs are a tool to help with supporting nurses professionally and achieving better retention. But it is just one tool among many that administrators can use for retention and performance management. And at the core is to consider that both the employer and the nurse have responsibilities. The employer needs to create a practice environment that supports a culture of improvement. And the nurse, as an individual, is responsible for maintaining their professional competence. And so when a clinical ladder program is well designed and effectively implemented, it signals an investment from the organization into its nurse workforce.
Of course, implementing these programs isn't always straightforward. There are challenges, like buy-in from leadership and aligning with organizational goals.
It's not just about maintaining clinical skills, but actively growing your skills. And I think it's important to frame it in this way because it underscores that core concept that to be a clinician, one must grow. It's a continuum. It does not stop. Healthcare evolves rapidly, especially the technology side of healthcare. But the systems used to deliver care, they don't change nearly as fast as the technology. The system itself, which is made up of diagnostic tools, surgical procedures, lab techniques, all of that is so critical. But there's also other components that can be much more bureaucratic, the regulatory system and financial components, and they feel very slow moving, and it may even at times feel at odds with each other. And this mismatch creates frustration for nurses as they try to grow and they try to adapt. And that's why I think the focus shouldn't just be on advancing clinical skills for career progression, but on developing the behaviors and the mindset that one needs to be flexible so they can navigate through a system that may not always move as quickly as you want it to. If you can remain nimble, you're still able to deliver safe and effective patient care. You're not only growing as a professional, but you're also helping to strengthen the system that you're working in.
Designing leadership programs in healthcare can sound like a top-down process, but real leadership, it listens before it leads.
Be sure to start engaging your frontline nursing staff from the beginning and understanding what it is that they would be looking for and what would incentivize them to participate. Because you don't want to start developing something and find out that no one is interested. Make sure you're engaging with those who you want to participate as you design the program. One thing that we hope we start to see more of is that there is an opportunity to leverage competency-based frameworks for our clinical ladder program, where nurses are guided in demonstrating the application of their clinical expertise and their ability to integrate their knowledge with leadership skills and behaviors that support interdisciplinary collaboration. So just as nursing is not just a series of tasks, the career promoting tool, which is what a clinical ladder program is, should not be reduced to a series of tasks. Rather, it should be used to support one's professional development and also strengthen the system in which the nurses work.
That kind of advice feels simple, but it's the kind of simplicity that only comes from deep experience. Because programs succeed not just when they're built for nurses, but when they're built with them.
If organizations want to introduce a standardized framework, one of the mainstays of clinical ladder programs is a framework that has been known as the Benner model. It's been tried and true for multiple decades in the nursing workforce. They learn how to apply their academic knowledge and then mold the art and the science, the behaviors all together as they develop a stronger sense of who they are as a nurse with the competencies that they're gaining. And that's the transition of the new nurse, the novice new nurse, moving through a continuum as they become more competent and they gain expertise. Resoundedly, from what we looked at with clinical ladder programs, was the majority leveraging that framework. The American Nurses Association outlines a host of leadership competencies. One key point to remember is that leadership development isn't just for those in management or director roles. Leadership isn't just about running a unit. It's about how do you navigate conflict and how do you build strong relationships and how do you understand the bigger picture. These are the skills alongside clinical competencies, as well as having a better understanding of project management and maybe some finance knowledge as well, are all equally important in shaping an effective nurse leader. Mentorship is key. It's important to think creatively about how leadership development happens. Is there an opportunity to give frontline nurses exposure to leadership meetings, leadership discussions, as a way to prepare them for roles while also strengthening morale and collaboration across all levels of the organization? And this may seem like a radical shift in an organization that's used to just having frontline nursing staff come in to complete shifts and leave at the end of the shift and not be included in management or executive decision-making, you would be surprised to see that it may actually be a stimulus for encouraging those appointed leaders to be clear, more transparent, and they may start to recognize where the gaps are in the organization's communication to staff.
That's where trust and leadership really begins. My next guest is Linda Dunmore. She's the Chief Nursing Officer at Trinity Health Muskegon, where she plays a pivotal role in building the kind of trust and empowerment nurses need to feel supported, heard, and prepared to lead. Hi, Linda. Thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Good to see you.
You too. So you've been in nursing leadership for a while. What drew you to leadership? Was that part of the plan for you to be in executive leadership?
I've been fortunate to have a lot of great mentors, and I've always loved the work that I've done. I can honestly say in every position, I've been happy doing what I'm doing. I've learned over time that if I don't take a risk, I'll never know if anything's going to be different. And if I fail, I just need to fail fast and go on to the next experiment. I never want to forget where I came from and who I represent. I've been fortunate to be in this organization for 36 years. And so I've worked in a lot of departments. I know a lot of the colleagues, and that's been very helpful for me. And then there's a knock on the door that said, we have an opportunity for you. And I said, okay, I really love what I do. I'll take that opportunity. And then I'm comfortable in that role. And then another knock comes on the door and says, we think you'll have great potential for this. I know that that's not how it always goes for everyone's career, but I think the important message is to love what you do. Keep focused and do it well, and let your successes in your work speak for you, and others will notice and help you.
Well, I want to dive into that a little bit more. So you're Chief Nursing Officer at Trinity Health in Muskegon. So
Yes.
Tell me about your journey getting there.
I was in college at 17, graduated as a nurse at 20. And then, if you can believe it, there were no jobs at the time when I got out of nursing school in Cleveland. And so I moved to Michigan, and I began my career at the bedside at a step-down unit. And then most of my clinical time I spent in the intensive care unit taking care of critical patients, which is really what I loved to do the most. I've done cardiac and pulmonary rehab. I've worked in a variety of different settings. Then our organization had recognized that nursing quality needed some attention, and they asked me to step up and oversee accreditation. So I got a passion for the Joint Commission standards and navigating our organization through surveys. I learned a lot about why standards are written. And then they asked me to assume the responsibility as a director for nursing quality. And I thought then my journey was, I had hit the top. I never had imagined that I would ever even be in that role. And then I assumed responsibility for patient care experience. And about 4 years ago, they asked me if I would be the interim chief nursing officer. So I said I would. Did that for about 6 months. And then my husband said, you've been doing this for 6 months. Why don't you throw your name in the hat? So I did. I accepted the position. I invested my heart and soul in this organization. And I wanted to make sure that we came out on the good side of COVID. And I wanted to pour into this organization.
One of the things we always talk about in the pre-hospital space in EMS is decision-making under pressure, being ready to make that big decision to change the outcome for patients. Now, you as a nursing leader, you're kind of in the middle of it all. How do you end up balancing clinical urgency to the organizational priorities, which are right there?
I am a firm believer that the strongest decisions and ideas come from those who do the work. So I always have to remind myself to step back. I understand the clinical work, but I really feel like stepping back and learning from those who do the work, knowing that they probably have the best solutions. And I think just transparency, allowing them to know that if I can't choose their option, why can't I? Is it a financial burden? Is it a regulatory burden? What is driving the decision that is the barrier for that? And just try to encourage them to think about other ideas and other strategies. So I spend a lot of time in the front lines. I'm rarely in my office. I'm out and about rounding. And I feel as a leader, that's really, really important that you have to have the pulse on the organization. I don't want anything to come to me as a surprise. And so people are pretty transparent with me. They'll report things to me because they feel that they can trust me to follow through in the appropriate way. So just trying to make them feel secure in their day-to-day work so that they can focus on great patient care.
So it seems like that continued integration that you have with the front line kind of keeps you in that collaborative space. Do you feel like that same approach is what you use with the physician leadership?
Yes. My office is right next to our chief medical officer's office space. We round together at different times. I sit on the medical executive committee, so I represent nursing all the way through our board. That is so key to have a collaborative relationship with the providers because we need them to give us the orders and to work with us on things that are changing and at the speed that healthcare is changing. And if I have provider concerns as well, I'll keep him in the know. And so I think having that constant communication and collaboration is really important.
We've talked about nursing, we've talked about physicians. I don't want to leave anyone out. So let's talk a little bit about EMS and the pre-hospital integration, because it's really hard sometimes for nursing leadership to integrate well with pre-hospital care. Where do you think the gaps and opportunities are there?
We do leader rounding here, which is really important. And I have been assigned to round in EMS. So I go out in a rig with the EMS. So I ride along. They take me on their trips. I mean, I'm there. I'm seeing how the barriers on the hospital side and on the nursing side impact their work, how communication is important. So, for example, I've been with them on a ride where we had to take a patient into their home for hospice, and it was wintertime, and no one told them that they would have to go up about 20 steps that weren't shoveled off. I'm like, how could they have left that out?
It's like, unless you're on the ground, unless you're out there outside the hospital, you can't really be informed of this, right?
I have such an utmost respect for EMS workers because they arrive on the scene with what they have. And that's such a difficult thing. As a nurse in critical care, I had what I needed. I knew about the patient. I was ready in the room. And that's not the case when they come up on a call. So understanding that disconnect and all that they do to prep and get the patient for us and what they need from us is really critical.
This is a collaborative approach, and it's an aspect that you don't hear everyone doing, especially in the pre-hospital space where you round, and it sounds like a lot of your other leaders are doing this. Do you feel that this gives you a distinct advantage in your position?
Yes, absolutely. When I started in my role as chief nurse, I spent a significant amount of time out there with the staff just listening and learning. I told them I didn't have all the solutions. I was looking for some solutions. And so I did a little segment, and I had my administrative gal schedule me for topics, and I called them Lounging with Linda. I knew that the staff would never come to a room to meet me because they just don't have the time. So I went to them. Rounds in the day shift at first, and then I started at night, and I did rounding on specific units at night. Now for night shift, because that is our greatest staffing challenge right now, I do a thing called Tower Talk. We have a 10-story tower, patient tower, and I come in, I'm on call every 6 weeks for our nursing leadership team, and I come in on the bookends of my Saturdays so that I see each and every colleague.
So you'd say in a real way, being engaged and collaborative colleague is all part of this new leadership paradigm that we need to represent.
You have to be willing to acquire feedback on your performance and be willing to do a 360 assessment, assess your strengths and your blind spots. And I always tell people, make sure you don't let the good stuff go to your head and the bad stuff go to your heart. Just take it all that others are trying to help you to grow and learn, and request that feedback. When I do evaluations and I ask people for feedback on other team members, I say, what do you appreciate about them and how could they be more effective?
Makes sense.
Because those are things that we all could do. If I have things that I'm doing that my team appreciates, I want to know about it. I want to keep doing it. I want to say, what else can I do that you would appreciate? And if there are things that I could do that I could be more effective, I want them to tell me and be honest.
So in a real sense, being engaged, being present, open to that feedback, being visible, showing up for the day, but more than anything else, while you're doing all that, making sure that you really are putting yourself in a place that you can be the right person for this hard job, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that perspective because we're talking about this hierarchy in our profession as healthcare workers, but when all said and done, the best leaders listen. The best leaders are engaged, and it sounds like that sentiment to your team is what brings you all together. And when we think about that continued engagement, the rounding you're doing, all that kind of stuff, is that how your whole team stays engaged throughout the whole system?
Yes, because when I go to their unit, the director's there, the manager's there, any supervisors are there. Sometimes our process excellence people are there, and we use lean principles for performance improvement. We're all there. So it's not in silos. We're all learning together and having those conversations. And then we're able to invite other leaders throughout the organization. That's the other thing I would say is making sure that we have healthy relationships with all our disciplines, not just siloed work. I think in the hospital, we tend to work in silos. And this works for me, and I'm going to make this decision, and it doesn't matter what the downstream impact is, but that's so important. You don't know what's happening to other teams when you're making a decision. So you must engage all the stakeholders.
Sounds like you bridge those gaps between your colleagues. You build these structures so that everyone in the end can work together. Now, with that being said, both of us have now spent time both at the bedside. We're now in the rooms where we make a lot of decisions. For you, reflecting back on this conversation, what were some of the hardest shifts that you weren't totally prepared for when you moved into that leadership realm?
Learning how to negotiate, learning how to negotiate with other members of my first team. I read a lot and I do a lot of reflection on leadership. And so understanding that you have to have good, healthy debate, but it's how you leave the room. You want to be able to bring your voice and your differences and your needs to the table. And you might debate that respectfully and collaboratively, and you might disagree, but it's when you leave the room, you're going to leave as a unified voice so that there's not that division between those teams. And I think that's really, really important.
You're listening to In the Heart of Care. On this show, we discuss what it truly means to lead in healthcare, from building strong, connected teams to fostering resilience and staying prepared for life's most critical moments. We're brought to you by RQI Partners, a partnership between the American Heart Association and Laerdal Medical. When you moved from being on the front lines to leadership, I think a lot of us would struggle with the concept that I'm losing that patient connection, that personal connection that really made me the person I was. Now I'm in leadership. It's different. Did you struggle with that experience yourself?
I did. Initially, when I left the bedside, I missed patient care. I wanted to stay part-time doing some patient care. I didn't do that. I wasn't able to do that and maintain the job that I was working. What I find now is I still have the ability. I don't directly care for patients, but I go in and I speak to them. I find out how their care is. I find out if they need anything, how their care experience is. And what I've done most recently is I will ride up in the elevator with visitors and they have a name tag on that says where they're going. And I'll just say to them, who are we taking care of for you on the 7th floor? And they kind of look at me like, how do you know where I'm going? And I said, well, your name tag tells me that we're caring for somebody. And then they tell me about who we're caring for. I mean, this is all on an elevator ride. Then I'll just say to them, how is their care? Are we taking good care of your loved one? And is there anyone you want to recognize? And if the care isn't so good, I get out when they get out of the elevator, and then I introduce myself and I say, I'd love to come in and meet your loved one and see what's happening and connect with the nurse. So I'm able to then give them my card and try to help support the nurses as well too, because sometimes they're in a difficult predicament as well with care situations that they need support as well too. I try to get in patient rooms as much as I can or navigate through the visitors and have conversations with them to make sure that we're meeting the mark.
I like how you've kind of kept yourself into that clinical space that way. That really makes me think, and I'm reflecting a little bit on my own career. You're now in a leadership role. That one-on-one patient piece may be lost, but you gain something else. You have this multiplier effect. The fact of the matter is, in the leadership realm, now we're having this multiplier effect where your skills, your competencies are affecting more people. Even in EMS, I'm now affecting not 100 people, not 2,000, 50,000. And it becomes bigger and bigger. Have you seen this ripple happen for you?
I have. I love to still mentor younger nurses. I have some folks that I'm mentoring through their advanced degrees. I'm a continuous learner, and I try to model the behavior that I want to see in my leaders. So I'm currently in my DNP program. And so I encourage people to learn. Your learning is never over. You're going to learn so many lessons, but I feel like, yes, you have a chance to create innovation that makes the nurses' work easier and makes patients safer. And to your point, in a variety of units and a variety of settings and in ways that you just can't even measure.
That's exciting. Now, I do want to tag back on something you just said, which really struck me, the mentoring. If you were going to give recommendations or tell someone, hey, here are the next steps to go into nursing leadership, what would you tell them?
I would say, again, that feedback realm is really important. I would find someone outside of your individual unit, but similar responsibilities that you have. So we have the luxury of being in a bigger system. I've had life coaches where I hire them and I say, I don't know what I need help with. I just want to keep getting better. I want to keep understanding how I can be a better leader, a better person. I think getting connected with somebody with similar interests or similar roles that you want to excel to, I think having conversations with your mentor about where you want to be in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and be okay if you don't know. Something might come to you like it came to me. I never thought I would be in a leadership role. I never envisioned that I would be in this role at all, and I'm not even sure I had that desire. But I think to your point, it really set into me that I can make a bigger difference even though I'm not the one touching the patient. I am helping everyone touch the patient in their best possible way, and I'm removing barriers in their care. And that to me is really exciting. But having a mentor, taking extra classes, be involved in your own professional growth and development and continue to learn, I think is really, really important.
When we think about what's next, we think about healthcare evolving all the time, and we have these mentees that we're going to prepare and we're going to get them ready. We got to start imagining what the next 5, 10 years of the hospital-based system is. Can you think of roles or things that might happen for hospital leadership that we really haven't imagined what that next development could be? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have already started to talk to our nurses as I've watched patients, especially coming from the intensive care unit working there. Patients are much sicker than they were before, ever before. And technology has advanced so quickly that we're able to do so many life-saving measures. And on our med-surg floors, I have already begun to plant the seed that we are going to need more acuity adaptable units. We need to stop moving patients around and saying we need a bigger ICU. We need to build up the competencies of the nurses so that they can care for the patient where they are and adapt to their acuity.
On this show, we spend a lot of time exploring the profound changes and transformations that we're seeing in healthcare. From this point of our providers, from going into virtual care, doing at-home care, innovations everywhere. And you've already described it, even pulling in what you just said right now about adaptive acuity, really being sure about who is going where and if we can take care of people at home. I guess what I'd love for you to leave our audience with is the why. Why do you still think we need nurses and physicians at the heart of all of our care?
I know for the hospital, I know that all disciplines are important, but the only reason anybody stays in the hospital anymore is for nursing care. Otherwise, they would be home. Patients used to stay a long time. We got to know them, and now they're admitted, and we're asking them about discharge questions. How quickly can we get them out of the hospital, right? And so those patients that are staying need nursing care. It's just such a noble, trustworthy profession. When you can take care of the most vulnerable and you see them get better, or you help them through whatever they're going through and their family, nurses and doctors are at the heart of that. And being able to just pour into the care of the patient that's in front of you and helping them to get through the crisis that, who knows, you might be through someday yourself. And being able to just take care of the most vulnerable and being able to connect all the dots for them, be the teacher for them, be the person that doesn't just pass out pills and keep them from falling, but talks to them, connects the dots so that they can progress across the continuum of care seamlessly. There's a lot of work to be done, but it can be done, and it's going to take doctors and nurses to do that collaboratively.
I love that last thought because it's the engagement, it's the empathy, it's the fundamental humanity, the things that we as people bring to the table to really care for people and get them to where they need to be. And I love the fact that you also mentioned a lot of times they're just really sick and really vulnerable to the point that they just don't know even where they are. And that comes into the work that our souls drive us to do, right?
Yeah.
We're coming to the table to bring this all together. Linda, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Good talking with you.
So we learned, again, leadership in healthcare isn't about hierarchy. It's about connection. It's about listening as much as leading and building systems that don't just function, but grow. Thank you for joining me on In the Heart of Care. To download resources related to today's episode, please visit rqipartners.com/podcast. I'm Dr. Ash Panchal. Until next time, stay curious and open to grow.